welcome to Meeple University's How to Play Kitchen Rush. Kitchen Rush is a cooperative game for 2 to 4 players, which can also be played solo. The game is set in a restaurant and is played in real time. Players have hourglasses representing their workers, and as they perform actions, the hourglass draining will signify the length of time that an action takes. Through the game, players will collectively be taking orders, gathering ingredients, plates, and spices from the board to fill those orders, cooking the dishes, and then serving them to earn money and prestige for the restaurant. The game is played over 4 rounds, each lasting 4 minutes, and if the team collectively serves enough orders to meet their objective, they will win the game. I won't step through the full setup of the game because there are a lot of steps and many of these steps change a bit depending on how many players are in the game. So I'll show you, this is for a 3-player game, how the board will look at the end of setup. You will have piles of ingredients next to the board with some ingredients in each of the storage locations. You will have piles of spice cubes next to the board with some spice cubes inside the spice bag. If you're playing with fewer than 4 players, you will have a few spaces blocked out entirely. Those won't be used in the game. And you will have an oven space and a storage space which is locked but can be used later during the game. Note that in a 4-player game, 1 oven space should start the game locked, but this was left out of the rulebook. You'll also have some clean and dirty plates. There should be some starting money in the office, and I'd recommend putting the rest of the money near the office, as this is where the team's collective money will sit. Finally, players should choose an objective. There is a deck of objective cards ranging from easy up to very hard. Choose the objective desired and place it next to the board. Players will also need a 4-minute timer, preferably one which makes an audible noise when time runs out. To perform actions in Kitchen Rush, players must move their hourglass workers to the various locations around the board, flipping the hourglass over and placing it on a green circle, or, in the specific case of shopping, in this green rectangle. Only 1 hourglass can occupy a circle at any given time, but as many hourglasses can occupy the shopping space as the team wishes. Some spaces allow the player to take a single action once. Some spaces allow the player to continue performing a certain action as often as they like, as long as the hourglass is there. Whichever type of space it is, the player may not move that hourglass from that space until the sand has completely run out. This hourglass is stuck here until now. It can now be moved somewhere else to do another action. A player does not have to move an hourglass once it has run out. The player may flip it over to perform the same action again. A player can also retrieve an hourglass from the board to off the board as long as it has run out of sand. No player can move an hourglass until it has run out of sand, and no player may move another player's hourglass even if it has already run out of sand. In this case here, in order to gain access to that space, the green player would need to wait for the red player to move this hourglass away, or alternatively ask the red player to do so before taking that space. If you knock over an hourglass, you have to stop and put that hourglass back up before returning to what you were doing. The game also comes with 2 black hourglasses, one of which the team begins with and one of which the team can acquire later in the game. Black hourglasses work the same way as any other, except that they may be used and moved by all players. To be specific, when a player places the black hourglass, he or she takes the action corresponding to that space. As usual, players must wait for that hourglass to drain of sand before it can be moved, but then once it is empty, any other player, or the player who played it the first time, could move it to its new location. Only the player who moved the hourglass can perform the action. You could not move an hourglass to a location, move the black hourglass to a location, to allow all players to do the action. Each round plays over 4 minutes, and each hourglass has about 30 seconds worth of sand in it. So each player should have 15 or 16 actions per round, plus any that they take from the black hourglass. When time expires, as measured by the timer on your phone or the egg timer, players must stop moving their hourglasses, but they may complete any actions associated with hourglasses that still have sand in them. Next, I'll go through the 8 different types of action spaces and how to use them. The first space is the maitre d'. And the maitre d' allows the player to take one of these 2 actions once. The first action is to draw 2 new orders from the order deck, placing them into empty slots on the board, and then take 2 coins from the bank and place them into the office. If the player takes this action when there are not 2 available slots, the player may only draw 1 and take 1 coin instead of 2. The other action that the player could take at the maitre d' is to discard 2 orders from the board that the team does not want to fill and replace them with 2 other orders. The team does not receive money from the bank for doing this. The player could also replace 1 order instead of 2. The second space is the waiter. When a player places a worker at the waiter, he or she may perform one of these 2 actions once. The first option is to take one of the face-up orders from the board and place it face-up next to his or her player board. This player will now be responsible for completing this order. The second option is to serve a finished order, and I'll come back to how that works later in the video. Once a player has taken an order card, he or she may take the corresponding plates from the clean plates section of the board. These plates would be taken, in this case a 1 and a 4, and placed on the 0 section of the player's player board. If there are no plates of the correct size, say for example there were no 1s in the clean plates section, the player can take 1 size larger. But the player cannot take 1 size smaller or 2 sizes larger to fill an order. If there are still no suitable plates available, the player can come back at any time later in the round and take the plates required. The player's hourglass does not still need to be at the waiter spot in order to do this. The next action space is storage, and there are 3 storage spaces on the board, or 2 in a 2-player game. While a player's hourglass is in a storage area, he or she may take as many ingredients as desired from that storage area and place them onto uncooked plates. Players will be attempting to make the combinations shown on their order cards. So, the green player would be trying to put 2 meat, 1 vegetable, and 2 salad onto a size 4 plate, and would be attempting to take a salad and a carrot and put it onto a size 1 or 2 plate. The player has run out of salad and would not be able to complete the order from this storage area. Restrictions to this action are that players cannot take ingredients from other storage areas on the board. They cannot take ingredients and place them off to the side to put on plates later. All ingredients when taken must go onto a plate. And if a player has started to cook a meal, which I'll describe at the ovens space, no more ingredients may be placed onto it. A player can place ingredients corresponding to multiple orders at one time, and the player can continue placing ingredients for as long as his or her hourglass is on that space, even if it's run out of sand. The next space is the spices action space, where players will be adding spice cubes to their plates. Each order shows the spices required. So this one would require a white cube, a black cube, and a green cube. Some plates require no spices. While the player's hourglass is at the spices space, he or she may take as many spices from the spice bag and place them onto plates as required. The spice bag is designed to slow you down in placing spices. So you can look into the bag as you're pulling cubes out, but you cannot dump all of the cubes onto the table and pick the cubes you want. So look through the bag and take the spices that you want and place them onto the correct plates. Spices can be placed onto uncooked plates, or if the plate has started to be cooked, spices can still be added. This is distinct from ingredients, where ingredients can only be placed on an uncooked plate. As for the storage spaces, you may continue placing spices onto dishes as long as your hourglass is on this space, even if it's run out of sand. The next action space is the ovens, where dishes will be cooked. On the order card, this icon here shows how many times each plate must be cooked. So while this top plate would be served raw, this bottom plate would need to be cooked once in order to be served correctly. To use the space, go to an oven space and choose one plate and move it one space down your player board. You must then wait for that hourglass to run out before you can do any other action with it. This can be the most time-consuming element of completing orders, and to complete both of these orders would require using the oven's action space 5 separate times. The next action space is shopping, and the shopping space may contain any number of hourglasses at once. When a player takes the shopping action, he or she chooses one of these 3 actions and performs it once. Each of these actions costs 1 coin, which is spent from the office. The first action is to spend 1 coin to buy 5 of any one of the major ingredients in the game. The player takes these from the off-board supply and then distributes them however he or she wishes between the open storage areas. The second option is to spend 1 coin to buy any combination of the basic spices, white, black or green, and add them to the spice bag. So the player could spend 1 coin for 3 black cubes, for 1 of each of those cubes, or any other combination, and the player adds them to the bag. The third option is to spend 1 coin to buy any 2 of the special spices, which are yellow and red. Once again, the player can get 2 different ones or 2 of the same and adds them into the bag. Any players who are currently at a storage area or at the spices space can utilize the new ingredients that were just placed there as part of their current action. A player may only make 1 purchase as part of a shopping action. If the player wishes to make 2 purchases, he or she must wait until the hourglass is out of sand and then flip it again to buy another, or bring in a separate hourglass. Returning now to the waiter space, I'll talk about the second part of this action, which is to promptly serve an order. The way the game works is that all orders that you prepare will be served at the end of a round, that is, after the 4 minutes is up. But you may use the waiter space to promptly serve an order if you're satisfied that it's complete. For example, this order that we've been building up is complete. It's got its 4 plate, which does not need cooking, is finished, and the other plate is also finished. To promptly serve the order, simply tap this card sideways and take 1 coin as a tip. From this point forward in the round, the player may not make any adjustments to the plates involved in this order. The benefit of doing this is that the team gets an extra $1, but the risk is that if this order has been prepared incorrectly, the consequences will be more severe. The next action space is the sink. When a player goes to the sink, the player may take any 3 plates from the sink and return them to the clean plates section of the board. The player must then leave the hourglass there until it is empty. The final action space is the office. To fully understand the office, you need to know a little bit about how the end of round phase works. So I'll come back and talk about the office later in the video. Go through each order in sequence. So again, checking this one, it has the right plate, it has the right 5 ingredients, the right 3 spices, and it's cooked correctly. So this order is correct. The players gain 4 money and 1 prestige, and these ingredients are returned to the suppliers. Increases or decreases to prestige are tracked by moving the purple cube along this track. If the team's prestige ever drops below -4, the game is over and the team loses immediately. There is a chance that your order will not be correctly completed. You may have the wrong size of plate, you may have the wrong ingredients, you may have cooked it too much or too little. Look at this example here. The top plate has all of the correct ingredients, but it hasn't been cooked enough. It's only been cooked twice instead of 3 times. This plate here has the right plate size and ingredients and cooking, but it has spices which weren't ordered. For any order card which is not completed, the customer is kept waiting and the players lose 1 prestige. If you had used the waiter space to serve an order promptly during the round, and then found out that you had prepared it incorrectly, the team loses 2 prestige instead of 1. 1 for keeping the customer waiting, and 1 for serving them the wrong food. The player will keep this order card. He or she is required to complete that order in the subsequent round of the game. However, whether or not the player keeps the plates depends on the manner in which the order was incorrect. Looking at this plate, it has all of the correct ingredients but hasn't been cooked enough. So the player can salvage this. The player can cook it in the next round to make it complete. So the player would hold on to this plate of food. However, this one has been overspiced. The player cannot pull spices or ingredients off of a dish, and therefore this cannot be salvaged. The player would throw away these ingredients, put the plate in the dirty pile, and would have to start over. This is the general rule to consider. If you can complete a dish without taking anything off it, you keep the dish and complete it in the next round. But if you've added too much, or if you've overcooked it, you'll need to start fresh on that plate. Note that all orders that you've taken during a round are evaluated at the end of a round. If you take orders very late in a round, hoping to get a head start on the next round, you will lose prestige for them. Next, the team has to pay for all of their workers. Every hourglass that was used during that round costs the team $3. So in a 3-player game, each player will have 2 of their own hourglasses, plus the 1 helper to start with. So the team would have to pay $21 from the office and back to the supply. All of a sudden, profit margins are wafer thin. If the team has not gathered enough money to pay for all of the workers, then they pay for only as many as they can. In this case, the team has $20 and needs 21, so the team would pay 18. Then, the common helper would be paid first, and then one of the other workers would not be paid and would not be available in the next round of the game. Players choose which hourglass is not available, and it's placed on its side next to the office. For each worker who is not paid during a round, the team loses 1 prestige. There are 2 ways to get this worker back. The first is, at the end of a subsequent round, if the team has earned enough money, they then pay for this worker and get them back. So in the subsequent round, if the team with 6 workers has earned $22, the players pay $18 for the workers that they have, and then pay back wages to this worker to get them back, paying $21. This is not optional. If the team has enough money to pay for a worker who was not paid in a previous round, the team must take that option. The second way to rehire a worker is through the office space, which I'll talk about shortly. The final step in the end of round phase is to evaluate prestige bonuses. If the prestige marker has reached one of these indicators on the board corresponding to the number of players in the game, say in a 3-player game it has reached here, the players have unlocked their first prestige bonus. The top card is taken from this pile and placed out. All of the prestige bonuses make normal actions in the game slightly more powerful, so it's useful for teams to build these up. If the team has gained further prestige, they may gain a second bonus, and if the team has lost prestige during a round such that they've dropped below the threshold for one of these bonuses, the most recent card must be placed back on top of the deck. Finally, each player takes his or her hourglasses back, the round marker is advanced to the next round, another 4 minutes is put on the timer, and players can discuss their tactics for the next round before starting the timer and doing it all again. Returning now to the final action space, the office. When a player goes to the office, he or she may perform one of 2 actions. The first is to rehire a worker who was not paid in the previous round. To do this, the player spends $2 from the office instead of the hourglass's normal wage of 3, and then places the hourglass with the sand full into the office. This hourglass will be able to be used as normal once its sand has run out. The second option at the office is to buy an upgrade. There are 4 upgrade cards in the game, and 2 will be face up at any given time. The player spends the money shown on the upgrade card, performs the upgrade, and then replaces it with the next card from the top of the deck. There are 4 different upgrades in the game. For 1 coin, the players can buy 1 new set of plates, 1 of each size, which is placed in the clean plates area. For 2 coins, the team can hire a new black hourglass. This is flipped with the sand in the top, as was the case for rehiring a worker, and as soon as the sand has run out for the first time, the team may use it as they would their normal black hourglass. Note that the new black hourglass also has to be paid 3 coins per round, just like the old one. For 3 coins, the team can unlock their locked oven space, giving them 1 extra oven space to use. The final upgrade, for 4 coins, is to open a new storage area. Players pay 4 coins and remove the lock token from the additional storage. The new storage will contain some initial ingredients that can be used immediately. Once the 4th round is over, including the end of round phase, the game is finished, and players review their objective to see whether or not the team has won. In most cases, objectives will require a team to get a certain amount of prestige, or a certain amount of money, or a certain amount of completed orders, or possibly a combination of the 3. There are a couple of specific objectives which go into different elements of the game. Players count up the number of completed orders, or see how much money is left in the office, or see where they are on the prestige track to determine whether or not they've won the game. In addition, regardless of what it says on the objective cards, the team needs to meet 3 additional criteria to win the game. They must have no unpaid hourglasses. They must have at least 1 coin in the office and must have at least 1 prestige. As long as the team meets all of these objectives, the team has won the game. The game comes with additional modules which can make the game more challenging or add more variety. The event cards come with the retail version of the game, and the Food Critic, Fish Orders, Health Inspection, and Wine expansion all come with the Kickstarter version. To play with the Events module, shuffle up the Events deck at the start of the game. Then, at the start of each round, draw 1 event card. These are all detrimental to the players. Some of them make a certain space less valuable during a round. For example, this one makes the shopping space purchase fewer ingredients. Some depict an immediate effect which occurs at the start of the round. For example, this one involves taking a series of spices out of the bag which were there at the end of the last round. And there are also some which result in spaces on the board suffering a malfunction. If it says to place a malfunction token, put that token on the relevant spot, and in order to take that off, players must use the office space and pay the money shown on the malfunction token to remove it. To play with the fish expansion, take all of the orders with fish in the ingredients and shuffle them into the main order deck. Take the fish tokens and place them next to all the other major ingredients. Fish orders are dealt out and filled just like any other orders in the game, but the handling of the fish ingredient is slightly different. There are no fish in the storage areas at the start of the game. When you go shopping, 1 coin will buy you 3 fish instead of 5, as would be the case with the other ingredients. And at the end of the round, fish go off. They spoil and have to be returned to the main supply. So at the very end of the round, any fish left over in storage goes back in the box. And if you have an incomplete plate of food, which contains fish, even if it only needs to be cooked 1 more spot or could be fixed with some extra spices, that whole plate has to be discarded and made new in the next round. To play with the Food Critic module, a certain number of the Food Critic cards are shuffled into the top of the orders deck according to the setup. A Food Critic order is a relatively complex order which is worth 3 prestige and only 1 coin. However, the risks of having the Food Critic around are higher because if you keep the Food Critic waiting, you will lose additional prestige. How this works is that if the Food Critic's order remains in this row at the end of a round, you lose 1 additional prestige. If you complete the Food Critic's order incorrectly, you lose 2 prestige instead of 1. And if you use the maitre d' to discard the Food Critic's order and replace it, you lose 1 prestige for doing that. To play with the Health Inspector module, shuffle a number of Health Inspector cards into the main orders deck according to the setup rules, and place the 9 bucket tokens next to the board. When a Health Inspector card comes out at the maitre d' space, the player must then choose a number of bucket tokens equal to the number of players in the game. Each bucket token has a location shown on the reverse side of it, and these buckets are placed at those locations but not on the action spaces. Then discard the Health Inspector card and replace it with a proper order. Your time is running out throughout all of this process. For the rest of the round, when a player goes to a space which has a bucket, the player may either perform the normal space action or may forego the normal action to return the bucket to the main supply. At the end of each round, there is a health inspection, and any buckets that remain on the board at the end of the round will cost the team $1 and 1 prestige. To play with the wine module, place the wine cellar next to the board and place the wine tokens off to the side. The wine expansion adds a few extra actions for players to remember. When a player goes shopping, instead of taking one of these actions, the player may spend 1 coin to buy 2 bottles of wine which are placed in the cellar. When a player goes to the waiter, instead of taking or serving an order, the player may offer wine to a customer. To do this, take a wine bottle from the cellar and place it onto one of your active orders. This represents offering wine to the customer who ordered that. Players may offer several bottles of wine in a round. A single order may not have more than 1 wine token. The wine tokens become important in the end of round evaluation. If an order has been correctly completed to a customer who has been offered wine, such as this one, the team either takes an extra $2 or an extra 1 prestige for completing that order. If an order has not been correctly completed, such as this one which is currently undercooked, the team can return the wine token to avoid losing a prestige for this. And that's how to play Kitchen Rush. I hope you enjoyed the video and I hope you enjoy playing. Please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to hear more from Meeple University.